bit of work on the trailing edge. This trailing edge is 10 mm thick, and I cut it 21 mm wide, and it's 395 long. I'm going to go ahead and work in metric on this since the wood is in metric. I hope I don't confuse myself too much. So the first thing to do was to lay out my little slots for my ribs, my main ribs. So I just lined it up and then put little tick marks. And to make the slots, I've ganged together 3 hacksaw blades. Put a nut and a bolt. This is pretty old school. I learned this trick about, I don't know, 30 years ago, 40 years ago maybe. It's pretty old school, but it works pretty well. This 3 together comes out to right at 2.5 mm, and that's the thickness of the rib. I'm only wanted about a 1/16 of an inch thick, so I marked the line 1/16 of an inch, and I will just trim down to that line. I'll use a square to help keep everything lined up. Alright, so that's good. And the last one here, I'm not going to do yet. And just to show you the fit, 2.5 mm balsa, and you see it's just a perfect fit. I'm not sure if the 2 mm is going to be quite as good, but really nice. Works really nice. This is going to be the leading edge of the flap, the left flap. I'd marked 13 mm, but they don't have 13 mm balsa, so I'm going to try to get away with 12 mm balsa. 21 mm wide, 395 mm long. The one thing when you're building from plans or scratch building that will definitely help you, benefit you, is to cut just a little bit oversized. It's much more economical to trim down, especially the ends, than it is to have to add a whole new piece or go through the hassle of adding balsa and then sanding back. So I always add maybe a 32nd, in this case maybe a millimeter. Give me a little bit to play with. So it's been cut. So now I'm going to mark these slots again. And just to show a couple of nice slots that are pretty much spot on. The one thing about this wing jig is it won't give me a whole lot of latitude fore and aft. It won't give me any latitude really fore and aft. I'll have a little bit of side to side. So, but you know, sanding the rib to fit won't be a big deal. I've ganged ribs 1 through 7 together, and now I'm drilling a hole through the center to accept a paper servo wire conduit. I got some carbon fiber rods from my jig, so I made the jig. Now the article says to use a wing jig, the RCM wing jig. That's back, I think, in the 70s or something. So I just Googled it, RCM wing jig, and it popped right up. It's on Outer Zone. You can download the article if you want, but there's really nothing to it. It's just a base, and you need to have the same size base, you know, so you don't build any warps into the wing. And then you've got your wing hold down blocks, and they're just held on with a screw. And you can see the screw. It holds the dowels in place. I'm using carbon fiber. I also have a support in the middle. The carbon fiber wanted to sag a little bit. I think in the article they use aluminum rod, but I couldn't find that here. Anyway, carbon fiber works just as well. And the jig also had you kind of screw it down to a table. Well, I built on top of glass, so that wasn't going to work. So I have about 8 pounds of lead weights on each end, and that seems to hold it pretty securely in place. There's also the article talks about having a gluing on a block, which is kind of a stop block for your leading edge. I'm not doing mine that way. What I did was I just, see if I can show you, I just used my square and matched up the leading edge of the rib with the plan. And I did that all the way down the plan. And I'm surprised, but yeah, everything seems to match up pretty well. I think you get the idea. And then I wanted to check the trailing edge to see just how straight that was. It's actually quite straight. I was really surprised with that. I mean, it's almost perfectly in line, trailing edge of the ribs. Especially since there was so much chance for error in getting the holes drilled for the alignment tubes. So that was really actually quite nice. One more thing I can show you is I had to change my flap dimensions a little bit. Originally I had the leading edge of the flap up here, but what I want to make the flaps and the ailerons removable. So how I'll do that is run a music wire through the Robart hinge points, and then when I want to remove it, just pull the wire out and pull the flap or aileron away from the wing. Well, when I had the flap up here, I realized that I would not be able to get that music wire out because the aileron actually is more towards the trailing edge, so there'd be a little blockage right here. So I'm gonna just make a one-piece trailing edge for both the flap and the aileron. It shortens up my flap a little bit, but it'll make building a little bit easier. What I need to do now is take, while my wing here is in the jig, is find the leading edge and then match up my square and then draw a line here. And I have to do that for each of the flaps. The ailerons are actually pretty much already set. The leading edge of the aileron is pretty much right there where that line is. So they're already set. It's just the flaps that I need to adjust. Yeah, so I got the aileron flaps cut away from the ribs, and then I separated the ribs. And then I started working on the trailing edge. Trailing edge is a 10 mm thick piece, but mine ended up being a little bit curved, more curved than I really wanted to try to deal with. So I took two 5 mm pieces and I laminated them together. It's been sitting about 20 hours. Time for me to cut this up and try to see how straight it is. So my laminated piece is just a little bit better than the other one. It still has a little bit of a curve to it. Usually comes out dead straight, but I'll go ahead and use this. If you hear a howling, it's because the dog is right below my feet. I hope I don't drop anything on him. A little housekeeping at this point before I glue the ribs in. First thing I'm doing is I'm adding a center line to the ribs. I don't think I'm going to need this center line, but as the saying goes, it's better to have it and not need it than the other way around. And I don't think I'm going to need the paper template, so I'm just peeling these off. It comes off real easy with that paper glue, no issue whatsoever. And then mark it. So with my very last set of ribs, of course, R12, I was separating them, I had a little too much CA on this one right here, and I got a little bit of tear out on this one rib. So if this ever happens to you, if you're ever doing this old school way of building like this, it's really a pretty simple fix. I'm just taking a piece of scrap that I used from the original Balsa, and I'll just cut out, it's about a 2-inch long replacement, and let's just call it 10. I mean, 10's a nice easy number. We're going to sand most of it away. Alright, then we're going to take this piece and we're just going to mark a little bit to cut out. We're going to cut out this little bit of rectangle here. Okay, I mean, that'll be all right. Then we're going to glue in this piece. Now the real trick for me here is to try not to get any glue right up here along the edge. That makes sanding difficult. So all I really want to do is get a little bit of CA right along the bottom here. And then it's just a matter of sanding down this to match your profile. I'm not going to take it all the way because I'm going to end up sanding all of the ribs anyway. So I just want to get this close now, maybe within about a 32nd of an inch. And again, as long as you don't get any CA right up here at the edge, it should sand fairly nicely. I'm using 60 grit for this. Easy fix. I have the wings on the carbon fiber tubes and they're weighted down. Let's see if I can get the sub-leading edge and then the trailing edge in. Try to lock these things into place. Right here, here, here. These three want to sit proud. May need to increase the depth. Sub-leading edges placed in position. Spars placed in position. Trailing edge is placed into position. I've beveled my trailing edge here for my rib. And everything looks straight as far as I can tell. I'm going to go ahead and tack. I'm just going to tack in each of these ribs in the top, trailing edge, leading edge, and the spar. The rib one I'm leaving loose for now, and I'll let this sit overnight and then come back and take a look at it again in the morning and see if I want to go ahead and fully glue it up. The trailing edge is oversized, and what I'll do is sand that to profile after everything is glued up. All right, it's all tacked glued in for now. The ribs are really right on the plans, so I feel pretty good about that. I think the trailing edge is nice and straight. The leading edge may be a little bit off, but again, that's just the sub-leading edge, and the real leading edge can be sanded to a nice straight surface.